Right. Hello, everyone. I think I should be alive and kicking. Well, welcome to my Earth Live lesson. Thank you very much, Lizzie, for having me on. Today, I'm going to try and show you a little bit about owl pellets. First of all, happy Easter as well, everyone. Easter Sunday. I hope you've all had your fill of chocolate. It's probably quite a good subject to be talking about when you're all stuffed like an owl. Speaking of stuffed owls, you'll notice there's my friend behind me is keeping a watchful eye on me and proceedings. So, a little bit about me and what I do. I'm a self-confessed raptor geek, essentially. I hate the term expert or anything like that. But about 5 years ago called Raptor Aid. My background has always been birds of prey. I've worked with them in captivity for a number of years, probably going on for 15 years or more. And one of the things I enjoyed the most through that was the educational side of things, educating people about the birds. Rather, the flying was great and working with the birds was fantastic, but I loved educating people about the birds. And so when I finished that line of work, I thought, right, what can I do? And yeah, so I wanted to carry on. So I don't work with captive birds anymore, but I solely do educational stuff through Raptor Aid, which is a registered UK charity. So we do a lot of owl pellet dissections. Now, as well as owl pellet dissections, we do identification workshops with the Field Studies Council and yeah, other educational things. And also, I'm a licensed bird ringer for birds of prey, and I spend a lot of my time out monitoring birds of prey. Unfortunately, uh, like everyone, because yeah, I should be out monitoring different species now. So anyway, such is life. So that's me in a nutshell. If you want to ask any questions, I'll try and get to them. But I've got loads. I'm surrounded by loads of stuff here that I need to show you. So, as the title of the talk was, what is an owl pellet? And you might think people tuning into this might be like, well, I know what an owl pellet is, but you'd be amazed at how many places and people I talk to who don't, in the sense that I've stood in many classrooms and the teachers introduced me and said, this is Mr. Jimmy Hill. He's going to be talking about owl pellets, and owl pellets are owl poo. They're not owl poo. They actually come out the other end. Hopefully, most of you knew that, but a lot of people don't. So, owl pellets are what are regurgitated by the owl. So, it's puke, not poo. Okay, now a lot of people, it doesn't make any difference really. But how does it work then? Well, you'll notice with the owl there behind me, obviously, birds have beaks. It's a sharp hooked beak, so they can't chew their food. They don't have teeth. And so a lot of owl species, what they'll do is when they catch their prey, small mammal, something like that, they'll swallow it whole. And I've got a little diagram here. I don't know how good it is, so my printer's cut it off. So basically, they'll swallow it whole. It'll go down through their esophagus, and then basically their body starts to digest it in their proventriculus first, and that's essentially the gizzard. So the idea is that it will mash the mouse or the vole or whatever it is up there and start taking the nutrients out, and then it will push it down into the ventriculus, and that's where all the good bits, the kidney and the liver, etc., will get to work with it as well, and it will take out the rest of the goodness of the prey. But the thing is with owls is they don't have very strong stomach acid, certainly not compared to, say, a vulture, which is obviously able to digest all sorts of nasties when they eat a carcass. And so what happens is they compact the pellet into a parcel, and then normally around about 10, 12, 14 hours later they will then eject it. They'll regurgitate it, so it goes back up into the gizzard, and then they will cough it up. Now, not just owls regurgitate pellets, okay? Other birds do as well. And actually, I was quite lucky. Only the other day I managed to find this. I'll hold it up to the camera. It's not very clear. I'd put it in a little vial as well, because these tend to disintegrate. This is a jackdaw pellet. And this is on our farm actually, and they were eating all the grain and bits that we feed the cow, so you can't see it that well, I don't think. But you could, if you had one in the hand, it's essentially, you can tell it's made up of lots of loose matter and basically plant material, and so I also know species like kingfisher will regurgitate pellets as well. So it's not just birds of prey that regurgitate pellets. So when it comes to other species, we're gonna stick with obviously birds of prey. I just want to show you a few different ones that you can get. So not just owls, kestrels. So this is a kestrel pellet here, and one of the classic signs I tend to find with kestrel pellets, I've got two here actually, is they tend to have that little nip at the end there where it's sort of pinched off. So you can imagine it's spiraling up and then nipped at the end. This pellet here, I don't know how well you can see. You can see those little black bits. There's beetles there. So kestrels also feed on small mammals. Another species that feeds on small mammals but invertebrates as well is the little owl. So this is a little owl pellet here. And you can probably see that, hopefully you can see, it's really sandy and soily in texture. And there's lots of little black flecks in it. And that again is from the casing from certain species of invertebrates that they're eating. So two different ones there. Often kestrel and little owl are quite hard to find because they tend to break down before you get to them. The kestrel ones, I'm quite lucky; they're in a barn, so we can find them. They're safe from the elements, so I can grab them beforehand. This is a little bit smaller again. This is a tawny owl pellet, and I often find tawny owl pellets quite difficult to get a hold of unless they're roosting in a building or it's in a nest box. But even in a nest box, they tend to trample all over them. So this is about the size of a tawny owl pellet there. But we're going to be looking at today, in my opinion, the king of pellets really for dissected. This is a barn owl pellet. Now, they do come in all shapes and sizes, barn owl pellets. You can get them, the small ones. I found small ones like the little owl and the tawny owl there. But this is black in texture. As they get older, they go grayer in coloration and then start to break down. So this is a typical barn owl pellet here. So all the fur and all the bones are wrapped up nicely inside there. And they get really big as well. So this is a barn owl pellet. Excuse the whiteness. I think that's a mixture of a bit of mold, etc. that's on there. But you can see that's my thumb. You can see there. That's a pretty big, juicy pellet right there. So yeah, it's always barn owl pellets I tend to use with school kids because they are full of so much interesting stuff in there. So health and safety. I always get asked this sort of thing. Obviously, I've just been touching owl pellets. When it comes to dissecting owl pellets, make sure you're near somewhere where you can wash your hands. And disinfectant and hand gel is great, but you can't beat a good bit of soap and a real good hand wash. We should all be very good at washing our hands nowadays anyway, with all the stuff we're having to put up with at the moment. So yeah, wash your hands, and then basically try and do it away from anywhere where you might eat food or anything like that. In terms of our owl pellets, what I tend to do is freeze them. So I freeze them first, and then hopefully that kills off some of the nasties. You can microwave them. But the problem is with a microwave, I don't know many people who've got a microwave spare that they don't use, obviously, for food. So maybe stick clear of your parents' microwave. That's essentially it. Gloves. I always get asked about gloves. There's a problem with gloves. I find a lot of the time with gloves, they're too big for kids. So they find it really difficult to pick the owl pellets apart. And the other thing is as well, a lot of them are plastic. And when I'm doing 30 kids a classroom, and I might be doing 3 classrooms in a day, that's 90 sets of gloves we're going through. That's a lot of plastic that can't then be reused. So there's nothing wrong with a good hand wash. That's my opinion anyway. If you want to use gloves, by all means, feel free. So what do you need? Well, it's not that difficult, really. It really isn't. I know you can't see here with the camera, but essentially, pair of tweezers. Cheap as chips off the internet. I think a pair of those tweezers, you could probably pick up a pair for less than £1, certainly less than £1. So a pair of tweezers, hand lens, so you can look a little bit closer at what you're finding, and that's going to be important. I'll talk through that in a minute. So that's really important. Again, B&M, eBay, places like that. I'm sure there's other places as well. You can buy them from not expensive at all. And then cocktail sticks as well, just for helping tease apart. You can buy specific little probes to tease things apart, but to be honest with you, a pair of cocktail sticks works absolutely fine. And you know, that again, they're inexpensive. And then I tend to use a paper plate like this. That is all you really need in order to dissect owl pellets. Now, where do you get the owl pellets from? Well, you can speak to an organisation like us, Raptor Aid. We will always try and supply owl pellets. In fact, we're about to bring out a dissection kit. I'll show you there. These are not even out yet, so you're the first people to see these. We're just putting these together and developing them, so we're going to use them. You can use captive owl pellets, but they don't tend to have as much goodness in them as what a wild one does. Speak to your local barn owl group or raptor monitoring group. A lot of owls, barn owls particularly, are protected by law in the breeding season, so it's against the law to disturb them. But you might be lucky, you might know someone who's got owls in a barn. You can maybe ask them to pick you up a couple of pellets off the floor. But if you're really struggling, get in touch with us and I'll try and sort you out. We do get some people who are a bit icky and still don't want to do it. So I had this idea. I probably nicked it off someone, I can't remember, but there's an owl pellet in there. If you don't want to touch them at all, put them in a glass jar, jam jar like this, bit of water, shake it up, and it's like you're a bit weird, but it's your own owl pellet snow globe. And eventually what happens is all the bones fall out and you can see the bones in there. You can even get a pair of tweezers and pick the bones out as you do it. Now, a couple of other things you will need. What I do when I'm dissecting pellets, I tend to draw around a bit of paper like this, 6 circles, and then I can organize the bones specifically as I dissect them, and I put them in little piles so I know I can come back to them later. I tend to dissect the pellet first, but also one of the most important bits is identifying what you've got. I use this guide here by the Field Studies Council is absolutely wonderful because it gives you loads of information on owls and owl pellets. Okay, so that's good. But just as well, Norfolk Wildlife Trust, for instance, have done this one. This was printed off the internet, free. You know, it's really, really good, and it's actually really detailed as well. So you will need a guide as well. But this is £2 or £3. And you know, that's free off the internet, so you can get them. I've got a couple of questions. Yeah, love birds. How many species of owls are there? Around about 230 odd, something like that. If you Owls of the World, the book, I think, states there's about 230 of, and then there's a few, you know, split whether they're individual species or not. Do you work with schools all over the UK? We try to, and if we can't work with schools, like the dissection pellet kits, we send stuff out. And since I've been doing these videos, also I thought, well, I could do virtual owl pellets in schools. You can beam me into your classroom and I'll talk to the kids while they're dissecting them. So what are you going to find in your owl pellets then? Well, this is the interesting thing. There's all sorts of stuff. With barn owls, they predominantly tend to be small mammal eaters, and top of their diet is something like this, the field vole. Okay, so basically short, blunt snout, the short-tailed field vole. Barn owls tend to love them. But the wonderful thing about owl pellets is you can find absolutely all sorts in them. So I've got this little box of goodies here that I keep to show the children. And so here's one now. I'll just pick this skull up. See, a very long, pointy skull, and you probably can't make it out on the camera there. I'll try and hold it up and try and keep my hand steady. There we go. No, it's not focusing. This is a shrew. Okay, now shrews interestingly have red tipped teeth, and supposedly behind that there was a paper written. That is because the red tips are a sign of a higher buildup of iron in their teeth, which enables them to have stronger teeth, which is really interesting. Really, really interesting. You'll get other species like this. Look at that. You might be able to see those predatory teeth there and a long skull. That is a mole. We do find moles, especially certain times of year when moles have bred and the youngsters might be above ground, moving about, trying to find a new habitat, or a new tunnel. Also, this is really cool. We do get some mega cool stuff. This is a weasel skull. Now, that's the only weasel skull I've ever had in a pellet, but that is a weasel. Now that must have been a hell of a fight to pick up a weasel. We do get birds as well, and birds, they don't always turn up in pellets because they're often quite big. They tend to pick them apart and they will find bones. So that's like the lower mandible from a bird there. Here is a skull there. So you can see the bird. And often shrews confuse children and they think that the pointed skull of a shrew is a bird skull, but you can see there quite clearly there's a beak on the end of that. And I've been to barn owl boxes before now under license and found whole hosts of remains of birds in there where they've stashed them, because remember, some nights are better than other nights for feeding, and so they'll catch lots of food and stash it. So I've got a box full here of starling wings. There's a starling skull there from one nest box, and that was obviously a pair of barn owls that were finding starlings on one particular site, especially if you live near a reed bed where you've got starlings roosting in. Then that's a common thing, and you'll get some really tricky things. One of the hardest things I often find with some kids is getting them to look closely, because if I just show you this here, that is the lower mandible from a pygmy shrew. I haven't really got anything to put it to scale here, but it's absolutely teeny weeny. There, if I pull away now, you can see how tiny it is. So yeah, it can be really difficult. Now the interesting thing, kids love this, how you tell the difference between a different skull. I'll quickly mention this now, is it's all in the teeth, and the kids love this. If it's not enough fun to be pulling apart, pellets and finding bones, what you basically do is with your guide sheet, you get hold of a skull like this, get hold of a tooth, and you pull the tooth out. Now I know just from looking at that and experience, it's flat at the bottom, flat at the top. That's a field vole grinding up material like grass and seeds. Shrews, obviously, the red tips. If it was a mouse, mice tend to have cusps at the bottom, at the top of their teeth, and then root holes, just like a human tooth. And so, yeah, you can actually get the kids with the lower mandible of a mouse. I don't think I've got one here actually to hand that I can pick out straight away. If you pull the teeth out, you can count the root holes along the bottom of the mandible. And I forget what it is. I always forget. Yeah, house mouse is 5 and a wood mouse is 6 root holes. Dead simple. And the kids feel like they've achieved something really cool with that. So yeah, where is the best place to find owls in a built area? Depends really. Urban parks, tawny owls will be in urban parks. Sometimes you get little owls in urban parks. I know in places like London, where you've got these big parks, you'll get little owls in some of those, certainly tawny owls, barn owls in some of the much bigger parks. So you will find certain owl species in certain areas. So you can literally got a whole host of things that you can find there. And as I say, the guide sheets will help you pick through. Now, what are the benefits of doing it? Well, of course, birds of prey are apex predators, so they're top of the food chain. So if you've got birds of prey living in an area that hopefully the rest of the food chain underneath is doing well. But most people will be aware that organochlorines and fertilizers and pesticides in the food chain are going to have an impact on invertebrates. So little owls, kestrels eating those, it may in turn have an impact on them. Barn owls with rodenticides, kestrels with rodenticides. So by looking in owl pellets, if you're finding a nice diverse range of species, shrews, pygmy, common shrews, field voles, bank voles, wood mice, house mouse, you know that you've hopefully got a healthy environment. We work with farmers and landowners to try and encourage them to look after the land that is sympathetic to our predators like the barn owl, because in turn that will help all the other species. There've been lots of owl studies on owl pellets done and papers written on them, but I just think it's such a good way to get kids hooked. what better way than getting stuck in, pulling apart an owl pellet? It's like you're like Indiana Jones of the sort of conservation world, digging away like a little archaeologist. So it's really, really important in that sense to get kids hooked, but adults love it all the same as well. There's no reason why you can't do it as an adult as well. So yeah, it's just, yeah, super exciting, super cool. I hope I've enticed you and encouraged you to get out there and dissect some owl pellets yourself. I don't think I've got any more questions at the moment, and we're pretty much bang on time. I'd have loved to have dissected a real owl pellet for you, but as I say, we'd have taken up all our time just doing that. So this has been an Earth Live lesson. I hope you've enjoyed it. Hopefully you've learned something from it. And if you've got any questions, by all means, my social media is on the bio. You're welcome to send me a message on there, and I'll try and answer as many questions as I can. Right, lovely to speak to you all. Go and eat your Easter eggs and have a great weekend. Thank you, everyone.